The Outlaw's sister. Miss Judy Reed smoothed the wrinkles from her navy skirt and straightened her high collar as she prepared to face her students. 5 years in Mossy Meadow had earned her respect as the town's schoolteacher. She was known to be reliable, proper, and utterly unremarkable, just as she'd intended. The schoolhouse bell rang out across the dusty main street, summoning children from all directions. Judy took a breath, arranged her features into the pleasant but firm expression she'd perfected, and opened the door. "Good morning, children." "Good morning, Miss Reed," came the chorus of young voices. As they settled into their desks, Judy began writing the day's arithmetic problems on the blackboard, the chalk dust settling on her carefully pressed sleeves. "Miss Reed?" Young Eden Parker's hand shot up. "Ma says there's going to be a hanging next week." The chalk snapped between Judy's fingers. She kept her back to the class, willing her voice to remain steady. "That's hardly appropriate conversation for school, Eden." "But it's true." "They caught Billy Fletcher," the girl persisted. "Pa says he's the worst outlaw in 3 territories." Judy turned slowly, her face a careful mask. "We will not discuss such unpleasant matters. Now, who can tell me the answer to the first problem?" The morning dragged on endlessly. Judy taught by rote, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't stop thinking about the man whose name she hadn't heard spoken aloud in 5 years, a name that wasn't actually Fletcher. When the children finally filed out for lunch, Judy sank into her chair, her hands trembling. It couldn't be him. Billy had promised he'd never come near Mossy Meadow. He'd sworn to keep her secret, to let her live her carefully constructed life without the shadow of his reputation. Yet Judy knew the truth before she even reached for the newspaper on her desk. The artist's sketch on the front page confirmed her worst fears. There were those familiar eyes, so like her own, staring back at her. William Billy Fletcher, the headline proclaimed, captured at last. Her brother. "You've got another visitor, Fletcher." Deputy Marshal Daniel Morgan unlocked the cell door, watching the notorious outlaw carefully. Despite his reputation, Billy Fletcher had been a model prisoner. He was quiet. Courteous, even. He was not what Daniel had expected from a man responsible for 3 bank robberies and reportedly 2 murders. "The town schoolteacher again?" Billy asked, a hint of something like concern in his voice. "Miss Reed, yes," Daniel answered. "It's quite the Christian charity she's showing, visiting a condemned man." Daniel's mouth twitched. "She believes everyone deserves compassion, I suppose." He had noticed Miss Reed's visits over the past 3 days. She was always brief and always left with reddened eyes. He'd known Judy Reed since arriving in Mossy Meadows 8 months ago. She was well-respected, composed, and private. These emotional jail visits seemed out of character. "You have 5 minutes," Daniel said, leading Billy to the small visiting room where Judy Reed sat with perfect posture, her hands folded tightly in her lap. As Daniel took his position by the door, he couldn't help noticing how the schoolteacher's eyes lifted to Billy's face. There was a look of such profound worry that it stirred something in Daniel's chest. When Billy sat, their voices dropped to whispers. Daniel wasn't one to eavesdrop, but he caught fragments of words. "Didn't do this, Judy. Shouldn't have come here. Can't let them hang me for something I didn't." Miss Reed glanced toward Daniel, and he immediately pretended to study the wall. When their time was up, she rose with dignity, though her face was pale. "Thank you, Deputy Morgan," she said as she passed, her voice steady despite the moisture in her eyes. Daniel found himself watching her walk down the street, her back straight as a ramrod, wondering what connection the town's most respectable schoolteacher could possibly have to Billy Fletcher, and why she seemed to believe in his innocence when all evidence pointed to his guilt. Judy's small house sat at the edge of town. It was modest but meticulously kept, with curtains she'd sewn herself and a small garden that provided vegetables through the summer. It had represented everything she'd worked for. Respectability, independence, distance from her past. Now it felt like a prison. She paced the floor, the letter from Billy clutched in her hand. He'd slipped it to her during her visit. It had been a dangerous risk, but then, her brother had always been reckless. With a sigh, she carefully opened it. "Judy, I know I promised to stay away. Please believe me when I say I never meant to bring trouble to your door, but I swear on Ma's grave I didn't rob that stagecoach or shoot the guard. I was in Silverdale that day, at Nancy's place. She'll vouch for me, but nobody's bothered to ask her. Don't reveal yourself. You've built a good life. Let me face this alone. Your loving brother, Billy." Judy pressed the letter to her chest. 5 years ago, she'd fled her hometown after Billy's notoriety had made her position as a teacher untenable. It had gotten to the point that she could no longer bear the constant whispers or the sidelong glances. So Judy Fletcher had disappeared, and Judy Reed emerged with forged references and a determination never to be associated with the infamous Billy Fletcher again. She'd even refused his occasional letters, sent through an intermediary, begging him to leave her in peace. Now he was here, scheduled to hang in 8 days for a crime he claimed he didn't commit. Billy had done plenty to earn the law's attention, she knew that, but he'd never killed anyone. That was the one line he'd sworn never to cross. A knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. She quickly tucked the letter into her bodice and smoothed her hair before opening the door. Deputy Daniel Morgan stood on her porch, hat in hand. "Miss Reed? I hope I'm not disturbing you." Judy's heart hammered against her ribs. "Not at all, Deputy." "Is something wrong?" "No, ma'am." He shifted uncomfortably. "I was hoping I might have a word with you." She hesitated only briefly before stepping back. "Please come in." Daniel ducked his head as he entered her small parlor. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered but lean, with intelligent eyes that seemed to miss little. Judy had always found him courteous in their limited interactions around town. He was a serious man dedicated to his position. "Would you care for some tea?" she offered, desperate for something to do with her hands. "No, thank you, Miss Reed. I won't take much of your time." He remained standing, turning his hat in his hands. "I couldn't help noticing your visits to the prisoner." Judy froze. "Is that unusual?" "I visit all those in need of comfort. It's a Christian duty." "No, ma'am, it's not unusual." "But your distress afterward is." His eyes, kind but perceptive, met hers. "Miss Reed, I've been a lawman long enough to recognize when someone is personally affected by a case." She felt the blood drain from her face. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Deputy." "I'm not implying anything," he said gently. "I'm simply offering to listen if there's something you wish to tell me about Fletcher's case." Judy's mind raced. This could be an opportunity or a trap. "He claims he's innocent," she said carefully, "of this particular crime." Morgan added, "Many do." "But what if he is?" She took a step forward. "What if there's evidence that could prove his innocence?" "Then it should be brought forward." His gaze was steady. "Justice isn't served by hanging an innocent man, Miss Reed. Even if that man has committed other crimes, he would answer for those, certainly. But not with his life if he's innocent of murder." Judy studied him, measuring his sincerity. Everything she'd built could crumble with a single confession. Yet her brother's life hung in the balance. "He says he was in Silverdale the day of the robbery," she said finally, "with a woman named Nancy." Morgan's eyebrows rose. "That's easily verified." "Why hasn't his lawyer pursued this?" "He was appointed by the court. Judy hesitated. "He doesn't seem particularly motivated to defend a notorious outlaw." The deputy agreed. "I see." He placed his hat back on his head. "Thank you for the information, Miss Reed." "I'll look into it." As he turned to leave, Judy called after him. "Deputy Morgan?" He paused at the door. "Why would you help?" "You're a lawman. Surely you want to see Billy Fletcher brought to justice?" Morgan's expression was thoughtful. "Justice and vengeance aren't the same thing, Miss Reed. I took an oath to uphold the law, not to condemn men without a fair hearing." He tipped his hat. "Good evening." As the door closed behind him, Judy sank into a chair, her brother's letter burning against her skin. She'd taken a terrible risk, but for the first time in days, she felt something like hope. Daniel Morgan rode hard toward Silverdale, dust coating his clothes as the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. He told the sheriff he needed to verify some details about Fletcher's case. It was not precisely a lie, but not the full truth either. Sheriff Hollister had been skeptical. "It's a waste of time, Daniel. Billy is guilty as sin. We've got witnesses who identified him." "I'm just being thorough, sir," Daniel had replied, thinking of Judy Reed's troubled eyes. Silverdale came into view. It was a rough mining town with more saloons than churches. Daniel considered his unusual mission. He was risking his reputation by investigating claims from a schoolteacher on behalf of a notorious outlaw, yet something about the situation nagged at him. The connection between Miss Reed and Billy remained puzzling. She wasn't the type to be romantically involved with an outlaw. Her reputation in town was spotless, but the concern in her eyes spoke of something deeper than Christian charity. He located Nancy's place easily enough. It was a gaudy establishment with painted ladies lounging on the balcony. The madam, a hard-faced woman with hennaed hair, eyed him suspiciously when he showed his badge. "I ain't harboring no fugitives," she said defensively. "Not suggesting you are, ma'am." "I'm inquiring about a customer." "Billy Fletcher?" Her expression shifted. "What about him? Was he here 2 weeks ago?" "Tuesday the 17th? Nancy's eyes squinted. "Maybe." "Why?" "There was a stagecoach robbery that day. A man fitting Fletcher's description shot a guard. I need to know if he was here." She studied him for a long moment. "He was here. All day and night. Left Wednesday morning." "Are you certain?" "Listen, Deputy. Billy's been coming here for years. Always treats my girls decently and pays well. That Tuesday he lost badly at cards, drank half my whiskey stock, and passed out upstairs until morning. He couldn't have robbed anything but himself." Daniel frowned. "Would you be willing to provide a statement to that effect? And get mixed up in legal troubles?" "No, thank you." "A man's life is at stake." Nancy snorted. "Men's lives are always at stake. Why should I care about this one?" Daniel leaned forward. "Because an innocent man might hang for something he didn't do. Whatever else Fletcher may be guilty of, he deserves a fair trial for this charge." Something in his earnestness must have reached her. Nancy sighed. "Fine. But I ain't traveling to your town. If you want my statement, you take it here and now." An hour later, Daniel had statements from Nancy and 2 of her girls confirming Fletcher's presence in Silverdale. It was compelling evidence. But would it be enough? As he rode back toward Mossy Meadow, his thoughts turned to Judy Reed. Her relief would be apparent when he shared this news. The image of her smile, rare and transformative when it appeared, came unbidden to his mind. Daniel had noticed Miss Reed long before this case. How could he not? She carried herself with quiet dignity and was dedicated to her students and her community. During town socials, she was polite to all whom she interacted with, but kept to herself. He'd found himself drawn to her reserved manner, so different from the boisterous women who usually sought his attention. This case had revealed a new side to her. She seemed passionate, determined, and willing to risk approaching a lawman with claims of an outlaw's innocence. The contradiction fascinated him. It was nearly dusk when Daniel reached Mossy Meadow. Despite the late hour, he found himself riding toward the small house at the edge of town. Miss Reed deserved to know what he'd discovered without delay. When she opened the door, her face held hope but also fear, and this confirmed his suspicions that Billy meant more to her than she'd admitted. "Good evening, Deputy Morgan. You've returned." "May I come in, Miss Reed? I have some news." Inside, he removed his hat and watched her anxious movements as she lit a lamp. In the soft glow, with her hair loosening from its usual severe bun, she looked younger and more vulnerable. "Billy's alibi checks out," he said simply. "He was in Silverdale just as he claimed." Judy's hand flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. "Are you certain?" "I have signed statements. It's not conclusive proof of innocence, but it creates reasonable doubt. The judge will need to consider it." "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know how to repay your kindness." "It's not kindness, Miss Reed. It's justice." Daniel hesitated, then added, "Though I admit I'm curious about your interest in Billy's case." Judy tensed visibly, her momentary openness vanishing. "As I said, Christian charity, Miss Reed." His voice was gentle but firm. "I've risked my position investigating this case based largely on your concern. I believe I've earned some honesty." She turned away, staring at the small fire in her hearth. For a long moment, Daniel thought she would refuse. Then her shoulders sagged. "He's my brother," she said so quietly he almost missed it. Though he'd suspected some connection, the confession still startled him. "Your brother?" Judy turned back, chin raised defiantly despite the fear in her eyes. "My name was Judy Fletcher. I changed it 5 years ago when I came here, after Billy's crimes made it impossible for me to continue teaching in my hometown." Her hands twisted together. "No one in Mossy Meadow knows." "If they did?" "You'd lose everything," Daniel finished for her. "My position, my home, and the respect I've worked so hard to earn." She met his eyes directly. "Are you going to tell them?" The question hung between them. Morgan studied her face, which looked proud, frightened, and resolute. "No," he said finally, "that's not my secret to share. Relief flooded her features, followed quickly by suspicion. Why? You're an officer of the law. Being related to an outlaw isn't a crime, Miss Reed. He stepped closer. Your brother has made his choices. You've made yours. I see no reason to punish you for his actions. Tears filled her eyes again. I've spent 5 years pretending he doesn't exist. What kind of sister does that make me? A survivor, Morgan said simply, and now you're fighting for him despite the risk to yourself. That counts for something. In the lamplight, with her guard momentarily lowered, Judy Reed was more than the prim schoolteacher. She was a woman of remarkable strength and complexity. Daniel found himself wanting to know more about her, beyond the carefully constructed facade she presented to the world. But there were more pressing concerns. The evidence I've gathered may create doubt, but it might not be enough to save him, although the witnesses who identified Billy were quite certain. Judy's expression hardened with determination. Then we need to find out who actually committed the robbery. Judy could hardly focus on her lessons the next day. Deputy Morgan's discovery had given her hope, but it had also heightened her anxiety. If Billy's innocence in this particular crime became a matter of public debate, scrutiny would inevitably fall on everyone connected to him, including the schoolteacher who visited him daily. When the children were dismissed, Judy quickly gathered her belongings. She needed to speak with Billy before making any decisions. As she hurried down the street, she was aware of the whispers that followed her. Mossy Meadow was abuzz with the upcoming hanging, and her visits to the jail had not gone unnoticed. Miss Reed? She turned to find Mrs. Whitaker, head of the school board, bearing down on her with a determined expression. Good afternoon, Mrs. Whitaker. I've been meaning to speak with you, the older woman said, her tone disapproving. There's been talk about your frequent visits to that outlaw. Judy's throat tightened. I believe everyone deserves spiritual comfort in their final days. Perhaps but a young, unmarried woman spending time with such a dangerous criminal. Mrs. Whitaker's lips pursed. It's unseemly. The school board is concerned about the example you're setting. I'm accompanied by Deputy Morgan at all times, Judy replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. There's nothing improper about offering Christian charity. Nevertheless, we feel it would be best if you discontinued these visits. Think of the children, Miss Reed. The threat was implicit. Her position was at risk. Everything she'd worked for could disappear because she'd acknowledged her brother's existence. I understand your concerns, Judy said carefully. I'll give the matter thought. Mrs. Whitaker was satisfied for the moment and continued on her way. Judy remained rooted to the spot, her heart pounding. This was exactly what she'd feared. The beginning of suspicion and of judgment. Soon, the questions and investigations into her background would come. By the time she reached the jail, her resolve had hardened. She found Deputy Morgan at his desk, reviewing papers. Miss Reed, he said with a smile, standing as she entered, I was about to send word. There's been a development. What kind of development? Judge Patterson has agreed to review the new evidence, but he's skeptical. The witnesses who identified Fletcher are respected members of the community. The women who gave me statements are not. Morgan's expression was grim. He's given us 3 days to find more compelling proof before making his decision. 3 days? Judy echoed. It wasn't much time. I'd like to speak with my brother, she said, then added more quietly, alone. Morgan hesitated. That's against regulations. Please? She met his eyes directly. I need to ask him questions he won't answer with you present. Something in her expression must have reached him. After a moment, he acquiesced. 5 minutes? I'll be right outside the door. In the small visiting room, Billy looked up as she entered, his expression brightening despite the shackles on his wrists. Judy, he said softly, you shouldn't keep coming here. I'm sure people are talking. Let them talk. She sat across from him. Deputy Morgan verified your alibi in Silverdale. The judge is reviewing the case. Relief flashed across his features. The deputy helped? Why would he do that? He believes in justice, Judy said simply, but we need more evidence. Billy, I need the truth, all of it. Who might have framed you for this robbery? Billy's face darkened. It could be several people. I've made enemies. This isn't helpful. Judy leaned forward. The stagecoach guard who was shot will die if his wound festers. Murder charges will follow. You have to give me something to work with. Her brother ran a hand through his unkempt hair. There's a gang, the Clayton brothers. They've been working this territory for years. We've had disagreements. Do you think they framed you? It fits their style. They've been known to dress like other outlaws to throw off lawmen. He hesitated. But there's something else. Before I was captured, I heard rumors about a big payoff coming through on that stagecoach. Gold from the new mine up north. Judy frowned. The stagecoach company claimed there was nothing of significant value taken. Exactly. Billy's eyes met hers. What if that was the point? What if the robbery was a distraction from something else? A knock at the door signaled the end of their time. Judy rose quickly. I'll look into it, she promised. Stay strong, Billy. Outside, Daniel was waiting. His eyes searched her face. Did you learn anything useful? Judy hesitated only briefly. If they were going to save Billy, she needed to trust someone. The Clayton brothers. Billy thinks they might have framed him. Morgan's expression sharpened. That's interesting. The Claytons have been suspiciously quiet lately. He glanced around the empty office. Miss Reed, this investigation could be dangerous. Perhaps you should leave it to me from here. No. Her voice was firm. He's my brother. I won't sit idly by while he faces the gallows. The people in this town respect you, Daniel argued. If they discover your connection to Billy, you'll lose everything. I've lost everything before, Judy said quietly. I survived. Some things matter more than reputation. Daniel studied her for a long moment, something like admiration in his eyes. Then we worked together. But carefully. As they stepped outside the jail, Judy noticed Mrs. Whitaker across the street watching them. The woman turned pointedly away when she caught Judy's gaze. The school board has concerns about my jail visits, Judy explained, noting Daniel's questioning look. I'm sorry, he said. This can't be easy for you. Nothing worthwhile ever is? She straightened her shoulders. Now, tell me what you know about the Clayton brothers. Daniel Morgan had never met a woman quite like Judy Reed or Fletcher as he now knew her to be. While most proper ladies would have fainted at the thought of investigating outlaws, she sat across from him in the sheriff's empty office after hours, poring over reports and maps with fierce concentration. The stagecoach was ambushed here, he said, pointing to a spot on the map. According to witnesses, a single rider fitting Fletcher's description stopped the coach, shot the guard, and took a strong box. But Billy says there were rumors of gold from the mine. Judy frowned. Why take a single strongbox if you're after a significant payload? That's been bothering me too. Daniel pulled out the inventory list. The company reported only $42 and some mail stolen. A man wouldn't risk hanging for $42. Unless the robbery wasn't about money at all. Daniel leaned back in his chair. What if it was about one of those letters? Judy's eyes lit up. Or what if the gold shipment was a secret? The company might not want to admit they were transporting it. It's worth looking into. Daniel stood. I'll visit the stagecoach office tomorrow and see what I can learn about their shipments. And I'll try to discover what I can about the Claytons. At Daniel's concerned look, she added, discreetly, of course. Women hear things men don't. As they gathered the papers, their hands brushed briefly. Judy drew back as if burned, a blush coloring her cheeks. The reaction stirred something in Daniel's chest, a warmth that had been growing despite his best efforts to remain professional. Miss Reed, he began. Judy, she interrupted, if we're conspirators in this investigation, you might as well use my given name. Judy, he repeated, liking the way it felt. Then you must call me Daniel. A small smile touched her lips. Daniel? The simple exchange felt strangely intimate in the quiet office. For a moment, they were not a deputy and a schoolteacher, but simply a man and a woman drawn together by extraordinary circumstances. The moment was shattered at the sound of boots on the boardwalk outside. Sheriff Hollister's voice called out a greeting to someone. You should go, Daniel said quickly. Use the back door. Judy gathered her shawl. Tomorrow, then? Meet me at Widow Jensen's cafe at noon. We can exchange information. She then slipped out just as the sheriff entered, giving Daniel a curious look. Working late, Daniel? I'm just reviewing the Fletcher case, sir. Sheriff Hollister snorted. You are wasting your time. That hanging's going forward, mark my words. Judge Patterson isn't going to let some saloon women's testimony change his mind. Daniel chose his words carefully. With respect, sir, if there's a reasonable doubt. There isn't? Sheriff Hollister's tone hardened. Fletcher's had this coming for years. Justice will be served. As Daniel rode home that night, he pondered the sheriff's certainty. Was it possible that Sheriff Hollister had some personal stake in seeing Fletcher hang? Did he know more than he was admitting? The thought troubled Daniel, but not as much as the image of Judy's face if they failed to save her brother. The next morning, Judy faced her classroom with growing unease. The children seemed unusually restless, whispering among themselves. Finally, during arithmetic, Josiah Palmer raised his hand. "Miss Reed, is it true you're sweet on the Outlaw?" The classroom fell silent. Judy's hand froze on the blackboard and then turned to face her class. "That is a wildly inappropriate question, Josiah. Where did you hear such nonsense?" The boy squirmed. "Ma says you visit him every day. She says decent women don't associate with criminals." Heat flamed in Judy's cheeks. "Your mother is entitled to her opinion. However, in this classroom, we will focus on education, not gossip. 5 extra problems for everyone." The collective groan was cut short by a knock at the classroom door. Mrs. Whitaker stood there with 2 other members of the school board. "Miss Reed, we need a word. Children, recess." As the students filed out, Judy composed herself. Mrs. Whitaker's expression was thunderous. "Despite our conversation yesterday, you were seen at the jail again." "I was concluding my charitable visits," Judy lied smoothly. "I won't be returning." "I'm afraid it's too late for that." Mrs. Whitaker's voice was cold. "We've received concerning reports about your excessive interest in the prisoner. The board feels it would be best if you took a leave of absence until after the hanging." Judy felt the floor shift beneath her. "A leave of absence? On what grounds?" "Inappropriate behavior unbecoming of a teacher." Mr. Collins, the bank manager, wouldn't meet her eyes, letting her know he didn't quite agree with the decision. "The children are impressionable, Miss Reed. We must consider their moral education." "This is ridiculous." Judy fought to keep her voice steady. "I've done nothing wrong." "Nevertheless, our decision is final." Mrs. Whitaker's smile was thin. "Class will be dismissed for the rest of the day. Miss Peterson will take over your classes beginning tomorrow." They left her standing alone in the classroom, her carefully built world crumbling around her. Judy sank into her chair, struggling to breathe through the tightness in her chest. Everything was unraveling, exactly as she'd feared. By noon, she had composed herself enough to meet Daniel at the cafe. She slipped into the seat across from him, aware of the stares and whispers from other patrons. "I was suspended," she said firmly. Daniel's expression darkened. "Because of your jail visits?" "Apparently I'm a bad influence." She attempted a smile. "At least now I can focus entirely on clearing Billy's name." "Judy, I'm sorry." His hand moved as if to cover hers, then stopped. "This isn't right." "It doesn't matter." She straightened her shoulders. "Did you learn anything at the stagecoach office?" Daniel glanced around, lowering his voice. The manager was unusually defensive. "He claimed there was nothing valuable on that coach, but his clerk told a different story when I caught him alone. There was a second strong box, one that wasn't reported stolen." Judy leaned forward. "What was in it?" "Mining deeds for land north of here. It's very valuable land." "Who would benefit from stealing those deeds?" "That's where it gets interesting." Daniel's eyes gleamed. The land was being transferred to Hollister Mining Company. "Sheriff Hollister has mining interests?" "His brother does." "And guess who's been seen meeting with the Clayton brothers recently?" Judy's eyes focused. "The sheriff?" Daniel nodded grimly. "We need to be careful." "If Hollister is involved in this somehow?" "He'll do anything to make sure Billy hangs for the crime," Judy finished. "We need to find proof, and quickly." "I'm going to track down the stagecoach driver tonight. He's staying at his sister's farm outside town while recovering from the robbery. Maybe he saw something he didn't include in his official statement." "I'll come with you," Judy said firmly. Daniel started to object, then studied her determined expression. "All right, but stay close to me. This could be dangerous." As they finished their meal, Judy noticed the cafe had grown quieter, with several patrons openly watching them. "Your reputation is suffering by association with me?" she observed softly. Daniel's gaze was steady. "Some things matter more than reputation." Hearing her own words reflected back to her, Judy felt a surge of warmth toward this principled man who had risked so much to help a stranger and her disreputable brother. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to imagine a future beyond Billy's scheduled hanging, one where her secrets were exposed, but where, perhaps, she wasn't alone in facing the consequences. The farmhouse where the stagecoach driver was recuperating sat nestled among cottonwood trees, lamplight glowing in its windows against the gathering dusk. Daniel helped Judy down from his horse, acutely aware of her hand in his and the faint scent of lavender that clung to her clothing. "Remember," he said quietly, "let me do the talking initially. The driver's name is Mr. James McPherson. He was shot in the shoulder during the robbery, but not seriously injured." Judy stood close to his side as they approached the house. A middle-aged woman answered their knock, eyeing them suspiciously. "Mrs. Tanner?" "I'm Deputy Morgan from Mossy Meadow. This is Miss Reed. We'd like to speak with your brother about the robbery." "Haven't you people bothered him enough?" she asked irritably. "He's told his story 3 times already." "We just have a few clarifying questions," Daniel assured her. "It won't take long." Reluctantly, she admitted them to a small sitting room where James McPherson sat in an armchair, his arm in a sling. He straightened when he saw Daniel's badge. "Deputy, what can I do for you?" "Mr. McPherson, I'm reviewing the details of the stagecoach robbery. I understand you identified Billy Fletcher as the robber?" The driver acknowledged. "That's right. Clear as day, it was him. I'd seen his wanted poster just the week before." Daniel proceeded carefully. "Did you notice anything unusual about the robbery? Anything that seemed out of place?" McPherson frowned. "Like what?" "Like the fact that only 1 strongbox was taken when there were 2 aboard," Daniel said bluntly. The driver's eyes darted to his sister. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Mr. McPherson," Judy spoke up gently, "a man's life hangs in the balance. If there's anything you're not telling us, anything at all, please reconsider." Something in her earnest tone seemed to reach him. James McPherson breathed heavily. "Look, I just drive the coach. I don't ask questions about what's inside." He glanced at his sister again. "But, yes, there were 2 strong boxes that day. The robber only took the smaller one." "Did you mention this in your statement to Sheriff Hollister?" Daniel asked. He didn't ask. He just wanted to know if I could identify the robber. Daniel leaned forward. "The man who robbed you, are you absolutely certain it was Billy Fletcher?" Mr. McPherson hesitated. "It looked like him. Same build, same coat as in the poster. He had a bandana covering most of his face, though." "So you identified him by his clothing, not his actual features?" "Well, when you put it that way." The driver shifted uncomfortably. "I suppose I can't be completely certain." Judy and Daniel exchanged glances. It wasn't a retraction, but it was doubt, and it was potentially enough to help Billy's case. "Mr. McPherson," Daniel continued, "did Sheriff Hollister seem particularly interested in confirming it was Billy Fletcher?" The driver's expression changed subtly. "Now that you mention it, he did seem mighty pleased when I identified Billy Fletcher. He kept saying how this would finally put him away for good." As they pressed for more details, a troubling picture emerged. Sheriff Hollister had been unusually quick to accept the identification, despite the robber's concealed face. He'd shown little interest in recovering the stolen documents, focusing solely on capturing Billy. When they finally took their leave, darkness had fallen completely. Daniel helped Judy onto his horse, then mounted behind her, acutely aware of her body pressed against his as they rode back toward town. "This is all connected," Judy said over her shoulder. "The mining deeds, the sheriff's brother, and the convenient framing of Billy." "It's still circumstantial," Daniel cautioned. "We need something concrete to take to Judge Patterson." They rode in silence for a while, the steady rhythm of the horse's hooves and the warmth between them creating an unexpected intimacy. "What will you do?" Daniel asked finally. "After this is over. If people know who you really are?" Judy was quiet for so long he thought she might not answer. "I don't know," she admitted. "Start over somewhere else, I suppose. It's what I've done before." The thought of her leaving Mossy Meadow created a hollow feeling in Daniel's chest. "You could stay," he suggested. "People forget scandals eventually." "Do they?" Her voice held years of doubt. "In my experience, people cling to judgments like precious heirlooms." "Not everyone," Daniel said softly. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching riders made them both tense. Daniel guided his horse off the road into the shadow of the trees, one hand instinctively reaching for his gun. 4 riders passed, moving quickly toward town. In the moonlight, Daniel caught a glimpse of a familiar figure. "Sheriff Hollister," he whispered to Judy, "and those men with him? I'd bet my badge they're the Clayton brothers. Where would they be going at this hour?" "I don't know, but I intend to find out." He urged his horse forward, following at a distance. "I'm taking you home first." "Absolutely not," Judy protested. "We're in this together." Daniel wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. The riders ahead had reached town and were dismounting outside the land office, which was closed at this late hour. They watched from the shadows as Sheriff Hollister unlocked the door, ushering the men inside. "We need to get closer," Judy whispered. Daniel hesitated, then tied his horse and crept toward the building. A lamp had been lit inside, casting shadows through the window. Daniel guided Judy to a spot where they could listen through the partially open window without being seen. "Papers are nearly ready," Hollister was saying. "Once Billy Fletcher hangs, there'll be no loose ends." "This better be worth it," a gruff voice replied. "Taking the fall for that shooting wasn't part of our arrangement." "The mine will yield 10 times what I'm paying you," Sheriff Hollister snapped. "Besides, it's Billy Fletcher who's taking the fall, not you." "What about the deeds we took?" "When do we get paid for those?" "When the judge signs Billy Fletcher's death warrant, 2 more days." Judy's hand gripped Daniel's arm tightly. They had their proof. Sheriff Hollister had conspired with the Claytons to frame Billy for a robbery they had committed, all to cover up the stealing of valuable mining deeds. A floorboard creaked beneath Judy's foot. Inside, the voices stopped abruptly. "Someone's out there," Sheriff Hollister growled. "Run," Daniel whispered urgently to Judy, drawing his gun. "Get to the judge's house. Tell him everything. I won't leave you. Go." He pushed her toward the alley as the land office door burst open. "Daniel?" Sheriff Hollister's surprised voice carried through the night. "What are you doing here?" Daniel stepped into the light, his gun steady. "I could ask you the same question, Sheriff." "Having a late meeting with the real stagecoach robbers?" Sheriff Hollister's face darkened. "You're making a mistake, boy." "I don't think so." "I heard enough to know you framed Billy Fletcher for a robbery the Claytons committed, all for some mining deeds." Behind Sheriff Hollister, the 3 Clayton brothers emerged, guns drawn. "You're outnumbered, Deputy," Sheriff Hollister said coldly. "Put down your weapon." Daniel's mind raced. He needed to buy Judy time to reach the judge. 4 against 1 isn't great odds, he agreed. But Judge Patterson will find it interesting that you're meeting with known outlaws at midnight. The judge won't hear anything from you. Sheriff Hollister raised his gun. "You'll be remembered as a deputy who tragically died trying to stop a jailbreak." As Sheriff Hollister's finger tightened on the trigger, a shot rang out. But it wasn't from his gun. The sheriff cried out, clutching his hand as his weapon clattered to the ground. "The next one won't be a warning shot?" Judy's voice came firmly from the shadows, where she stood with a small derringer aimed steadily at the group. The momentary distraction was all Daniel needed. In a swift motion, he kicked Sheriff Hollister's fallen gun away and leveled his own at the Clayton brothers. "Drop your weapons." "All of you." One of the brothers made a move to fire, but Daniel was faster, shooting the gun from his hand. With curses of pain, the others slowly lowered their weapons. "Judy, get the deputy from the saloon," Daniel ordered, not taking his eyes off the men. "You won't get away with this," Sheriff Hollister snarled, blood seeping between the fingers clutching his wounded hand. "I already have," Daniel replied. "It's over, Sheriff." The next morning, Mossy Meadow buzzed with unprecedented scandal. Sheriff Hollister and the Clayton brothers sat in the same jail where Billy Fletcher had been held. Judge Patterson, after hearing the evidence and witness testimonies gathered overnight, had issued a release order for Billy and arrest warrants for the conspirators. Judy stood in the shadows of the jail's porch as her brother emerged into the sunlight, free for the first time in weeks. Despite his haggard appearance, Billy's face split into a wide grin when he saw her. "Judy," he said, embracing her tightly, "I never thought you'd acknowledge me again, let alone save my life." She returned his embrace briefly before stepping back. "You're still wanted for your other crimes, Billy." "This isn't a complete exoneration." "I know." His expression sobered. "But it's a chance to make things right." "Deputy Morgan offered me a deal. If I testify against the sheriff and the Claytons, he'll speak to the territorial judge about reducing my sentences for the bank robberies." Judy glanced at Daniel, who stood nearby talking to the circuit judge. He's a good man. Better than I deserve as a brother-in-law, Billy said with a knowing smile. Heat rushed to Judy's face. Don't be ridiculous. He was simply upholding justice. Sure he was. Billy's eyes twinkled, and he looks at all school teachers like they hung the moon. Before Judy could formulate a suitably cutting response, Daniel approached them. Mr. Fletcher, he said formally, extending his hand to Billy, the judge has agreed to the arrangement we discussed. You'll need to remain in the territory until the trial, but you won't be held in custody. Billy shook his hand. I appreciate that, Deputy. I'll honor my word. See that you do? Daniel's tone was professional but not unkind. I've arranged a room for you at the hotel. I suggest you keep a low profile until the trial. As Billy moved away to collect his few belongings, Daniel turned to Judy. His eyes softened. How are you holding up? I'm not entirely sure, she admitted. Everything's happened so quickly. Around them, townspeople hurried past, some openly staring, others pointedly looking away. News of Judy's true identity had spread like wildfire overnight. The school board wants to see me this afternoon, she said quietly. I assume to formally request my resignation. Daniel's jaw tightened. They'd be fools to let you go. You're the best teacher this town has had. I lied about who I was, Daniel. People don't easily forgive deception. You did what you had to do to survive. His voice was fierce with conviction. And you've proven your character through your actions. That should count for more than your name. Judy wished she could share his optimism. Regardless, I should prepare for the meeting. Would you walk with me to my house? They moved through town together, acutely aware of the whispers that followed them. Outside her small home, Judy paused. Thank you, she said simply, for believing in Billy's innocence, for helping me, for everything. Daniel took her hand, his touch sending warmth through her despite the morning chill. Judy, last night, when Hollister had his gun pointed at me. He hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically unsure. I realized something. Life can change, or end, in an instant. Some things shouldn't remain unsaid. Her heart quickened. What things? That I admire you more than any woman I've ever known. Your courage, your principles, and your loyalty. His eyes held hers intently. That I'd very much like to court you properly if you'd allow it. Judy's breath caught. Daniel, my reputation in this town is in tatters. I'm the sister of an outlaw who lied about her identity for years. Associating with me could damage your standing as deputy. Do you think I care about that? He stepped closer. Judy, you taught me that some things matter more than reputation. You matter more. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. For a woman who had spent years guarding her heart as carefully as her secrets, the sudden vulnerability was terrifying yet exhilarating. I need some time, she said quietly, to discover what's left of my life after today. Daniel's disappointment flashed briefly in his eyes. I understand. Just know that my feelings won't change, whatever the school board decides. He tipped his hat and turned to leave. Judy watched him for a moment, then called after him. Daniel? He looked back, hope brightening his features. I admire you too, she said simply. More than I can say. His smile stayed with her as she entered her house, warming her against the uncertainty that lay ahead. The school board meeting was exactly as difficult as Judy had anticipated. She sat straight-backed before the 5 members, enduring their expressions of shock, disappointment, and in Mrs. Whittaker's case, vindication. You deliberately misled this community, Mr. Collins stated severely. You presented false credentials and concealed your relationship to a known criminal. I presented my actual teaching qualifications, Judy corrected. My references were genuine, though under my new name. I simply wished to be judged on my own merits, not my brother's mistakes. Nevertheless, Mrs. Whittaker interjected, this deception cannot be overlooked. The board unanimously agrees that your position must be terminated immediately. Judy had expected this, but the finality still stung. 5 years of dedicated teaching, of building relationships with her students and their families, were erased due to circumstances beyond her control. I understand, she said with dignity. I'll collect my personal items from the schoolhouse tomorrow. That won't be necessary, an unexpected voice declared from the doorway. Judy turned to find Reverend Taylor, the local minister, entering the room. Behind him came several parents, including, surprisingly, Mrs. Palmer, Josiah's mother, who had criticized her just yesterday. "Reverend, this is a closed meeting," Mrs. Whitaker protested. "Perhaps it shouldn't be," the Reverend replied mildly. "Not when it concerns someone as valuable to our community as Miss Reed or Miss Fletcher, if she prefers." Mrs. Palmer stepped forward. "My Josiah has learned more in 1 year with Miss Reed than in 3 years with the previous teacher. I don't care if her brother is Billy the Kid himself. She's a good teacher who cares about our children." Other parents voiced similar sentiments, creating a chorus of support that left Judy speechless. Even Mr. Collins looked taken aback by the show of solidarity. Reverend Taylor addressed the board directly. "I believe in redemption and forgiveness. Miss Reed has consistently demonstrated exceptional moral character during her time in Mossy Meadow. Judging her for her brother's crimes or for protecting herself from prejudice seems contrary to Christian principles." Judy felt tears threatening. After years of hiding, of expecting the worst from people, this unexpected defense touched her deeply. Mrs. Whitaker's lips thinned to a nearly invisible line. "The board will reconsider its position," she conceded reluctantly. "We will vote again next week. Until then, Miss Peterson will continue as substitute." It wasn't a victory, but it was a reprieve, and more than Judy had dared hope for. As the meeting adjourned and well-wishers surrounded her, she caught sight of Daniel standing quietly at the back of the room, watching with evident pride. Later, as they walked together in the soft evening light, Judy felt lighter than she had in years. "You knew about the parents coming to the meeting," she accused gently. Daniel's innocent expression didn't fool her for a moment. "I may have mentioned to Reverend Taylor that the board was being rather hasty in its judgment." "And he organized the parents?" "Actually, Mrs. Palmer did that on her own. Apparently, Josiah was quite upset at the thought of losing you as his teacher." Judy shook her head in wonder. "I never expected anyone to stand up for me once they knew the truth. You underestimate how much you mean to this town." Daniel stopped walking, turning to face her. "And how much you mean to me." In the golden light of sunset, with the weight of secrets finally lifted from her shoulders, Judy made a decision. She stepped closer to Daniel, her hand finding his. "I don't need more time," she said softly. "I know what I want." His eyes searched hers. "And what is that?" "A future where I don't have to hide who I am. Where I can be proud of the good I do, regardless of my past." She squeezed his hand. "A future that includes you, if you still want that." Daniel's answer came not in words, but in the gentle way he drew her closer, his lips finding hers in a kiss that promised understanding, acceptance, and a love strong enough to weather any storm of gossip or prejudice that might come their way. When they finally parted, Judy smiled. "I should warn you. Having an outlaw for a brother-in-law comes with certain complications." Daniel laughed, the sound warm in the gathering dusk. "I think we've proven we handle complications rather well together." As they walked on hand in hand, Judy reflected that her carefully constructed life had indeed crumbled, but from its ruins something more authentic and precious had emerged. For the first time since changing her name, she felt truly free to be herself, with a man who valued her precisely for who she was, not who she pretended to be. The outlaw's sister had finally found her own kind of justice, and with it an unexpected happy ending.